There's this incredible story about Abraham, one you definitely won't find in the Bible. It's this wild tale of defiance, of bargaining with God, and it all ends with this huge cosmic lesson. Today, we're going to dive into what's known as the Testament of Abraham.
So what happens when a man who is literally too holy to die is told his time is up? I mean, can you actually negotiate with God? That's the core question, the real heart of this entire amazing story.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're talking about the patriarch Abraham himself, the great ancestor figure. And we meet him at the very, very end of his incredibly long life.
And when I say long, I mean long. According to this particular text, he's an unbelievable 995 years old. And his life? Well, by every single account, it was pretty much perfect, totally beyond reproach.
And see, that's where God has a bit of a problem. Abraham isn't just some good guy. He's like the poster child for virtue. His hospitality is legendary, he's the definition of righteous, and he's even got the title Friend of God. So, yeah, how exactly do you tell that guy it's his time to go?
Okay, so God decides it's time. But he knows this is going to be awkward. So he doesn't just send any old angel. No, he sends the big gun, his chief captain, the Archangel Michael, on what has to be one of the toughest assignments ever.
So Michael shows up, right? He's disguised as a simple traveler. And what does Abraham do? Exactly what you'd expect. He immediately welcomes him in, washes his feet, brings him food, treats him like royalty. And Michael, he's just floored. He is so overwhelmed by how genuinely good this man is that he can't bring himself to deliver the bad news.
He literally starts weeping. He prays to God and is like, I can't do it. I cannot bear to tell him. He's been completely and utterly disarmed by kindness. Wild, right?
Well, the direct approach was a total bust. So the message has to find a sneakier way in. Abraham's son, Isaac, has this terrifying dream. He sees the sun and the moon, which, symbolize his parents, being taken right off his father's head. He tells Michael about it, and the archangel has to be the one to interpret it. Yeah, that means your father's soul is about to be taken. And just like that, the cat is out of the bag.
Now, you'd think a man like Abraham would just say, okay, I understand, and accept his fate, right? Nope. This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. For what seems like the first time ever, Abraham actually pushes back against an order from God.
And his response is just stunning. He looks at Michael and says, look, I know you're a messenger from the Lord, but if you think I'm going with you, I'm not. This isn't him being in denial. Oh no, this is a negotiation. Abraham is cashing in all his friend of God chips to bargain for his own life.
And get this, he makes a counteroffer, and it is brilliant. He says he won't die until God grants him one last wish. He wants to see the entire world and everything God has ever created. It's the ultimate delay tactic, right? And the most surprising part? God says yes.
So Abraham gets his wish. But if you're picturing some beautiful, scenic world tour, think again. This journey turns out to be a really brutal lesson in what humanity is really like and how divine judgment actually works.
He gets swept up into the heavens on a chariot of the cherubim. And from this, let's call it a God's eye view, he sees humanity, warts and all. He witnesses murderers, thieves, adulterers, you name it. And Abraham, this perfectly righteous man, is absolutely horrified. His knee-jerk reaction? Justice, now. He basically yells down, God, send wild beasts, rain down fire from heaven, destroy these sinners. But God's reply, this is really the turning point of the whole story. God gently tells him, Abraham, if I used your standard of justice, if I struck down everyone who did wrong, there'd be nothing left. I'd have to destroy all of creation. It's such a powerful moment. It just perfectly shows the massive difference between our human desire for instant justice and God's incredible patience and mercy. And to really hammer this point home, the journey ends with this incredibly powerful vision. Abraham sees two gates. The first one is wide, and it's just crowded with souls, all of them weeping as they head towards destruction. But then there's a second gate. It's really narrow, and only a few souls are going through, but they're all rejoicing because they're on their way to life. For the very first time, Abraham is seeing the whole cosmic system of judgment up close and personal.
And, seeing this grand, impartial system of how it all works, well, that just changes everything for him.
After seeing that, all of Abraham's resistance just melts away. He finally gets it.
Death isn't a punishment. It's just a necessary step, a transition in this huge divine plan. He's seen that there's a process for every single soul, and he's finally ready to accept that he's part of it too.
So in the end, this ancient story gives us this amazing picture, doesn't it? A saint who is so human in his fear of dying, and a God who is patient enough to teach him a lesson instead of just giving an order. And it leaves us with this big question to think about. What does a story like this, about a reluctant saint and a compassionate God, tell us about how people way back then tried to make sense of the great mystery of death?
All right, let's dive into a story that's part epic, part theological thriller. It comes from a really old text called the Testament of Abraham, and it asks a pretty wild question. What happens when one of the most important figures in history just refuses to die?
Yeah, that's the heart of it. Abraham isn't just some guy. The text literally calls him God's friend. So when it's his time to go, he does the unthinkable. He says no. And believe me, that one little word kicks off a cosmic struggle between heaven, earth, and one very stubborn old man.
So the story starts with a pretty straightforward divine mission. God sends none other than the Archangel Michael, his top guy, to deliver the news. Should be simple, right? Well, Abraham, for all his faith, just isn't having it. He digs in his heels. And this one act of defiance, it forces heaven to completely rethink its entire strategy.
Okay, so plan A didn't work. For plan B, God decides to show Abraham exactly what's at stake. This isn't about punishment, though. It's about helping him understand. So Abraham gets a kind of VIP tour to witness the great and terrible machinery of divine judgment.
To get him to change his mind, God gives Abraham this tour of the afterlife. You have to picture this. He's riding in a celestial chariot, and he looks down and sees two gates. There's a wide one where all the sinners are streaming through, and a narrow one for the righteous. And right there, sitting on a throne of crystal and fire, is a judge, deciding the fate of every single soul. This is his first look at how it all works.
And you know what? It's not chaos at all. It's a highly organized system. The whole process has 5 specific steps. First, the soul is brought before the court. Then, the judge presides over the case. Next, and this is key, the soul's deeds are literally weighed on a scale by an archangel. Then their life's work is tested by fire to see if it's pure. And finally, 2 angels write it all down, recording the verdict for all eternity. It's basically a cosmic bureaucracy.
So who's on the celestial court? Well, the judge, and you might not expect this, is Abel, Adam's son. In this incredible moment of divine justice, the very first victim of murder gets the authority to judge all of humanity. Wow. The weigher is an archangel named Achiel, and his whole job is to make sure the scales are perfectly balanced. And then you have 2 angelic recorders, basically the court stenographers, one for every good deed and one for every sin.
But here's the thing. Even while he's watching this terrifying system, Abraham's true nature just shines through. He sees a soul whose sins and virtues are perfectly balanced, just teetering on the edge of damnation. And moved by pure compassion, Abraham prays for them. And because he is God's friend, God listens. The soul is saved. This moment right here shows you exactly why heaven is going to such crazy lengths for this guy.
But guess what? The vision isn't enough. Abraham is still refusing to die. So God has to switch tactics again. If the Archangel Michael couldn't convince him, maybe a different kind of messenger will do the trick.
So, a new visitor shows up, and this one is radiant, glowing like the sun. He speaks with the most comforting words you can imagine. This is no grim reaper with a scythe. No, this is a glorious being of light. But it's all a disguise. This is death himself, trying a much gentler approach.
But Abraham is like 995 years old. He's seen a thing or two. And this beautiful messenger, something seems off. He's a little too smooth, a little too evasive. So Abraham starts pressing him, relentlessly. Who are you? Really? Where do you come from? What's your true purpose here? You can just feel the tension building as Abraham starts to pull at the threads of this deception.
And finally, Abraham has had enough of the games. He knows who this visitor really is, and he makes one last, absolutely terrifying demand. He wants to see the truth, no matter what it costs.
With these words, Abraham just calls death's bluff. He basically says, "Stop the charade. I know what you are. Now show me. Show me the real you." I mean, what an incredibly brave and maybe a little foolish thing to ask. To look directly into the unfiltered abyss. And the shift is just jarring. The contrast could not be more stark. That pleasant, glorious angel is about to be replaced by something utterly monstrous. The beauty was just a mask, and underneath was a reality of pure fierceness, corruption, and merciless power.
So what does he actually see? The text describes an unimaginable horror. Death reveals a form with multiple heads, serpents, lions, vipers, and different faces, each one representing a different way to die. One is like a sheer cliff, another is a sharp sword, another a raging sea. It's not just one monster, it's the physical embodiment of every terrible way a person can possibly die, all rolled into one.
And this sight, it is so profoundly horrifying, so unnatural, that 7,000 of Abraham's own servants, who just catch a glimpse of this transformation, drop dead on the spot. From pure terror, the power of this vision is literally lethal.
It's just incredible to think that this visceral, almost cinematic description of death's true form has been preserved for nearly 2,000 years, in texts just like this one. It's a good moment to just pause and absorb the sheer antiquity and wild imagination of this story. After a climax like that, the story moves pretty quickly to its end, because seeing the true face of death, well, it changes everything for Abraham. The fight is finally over.
The text says that Abraham came into indifference of death. After witnessing that absolute horror, the simple, peaceful end that's being offered to him suddenly doesn't seem so bad. The vision worked. He's seen the alternative, and now, finally, he's ready to accept his fate.
Death, hiding his terrible form once again, speaks to Abraham so gently. There's no more violence, no struggle. He just offers his hand, promising peace and strength. It's one last, clever deception. But you know what? This time, it's a merciful one.
And as Abraham takes death's hand, some versions of the story say he actually kisses it. His soul just painlessly departs. The text says his soul adhered to the hand of death. After all that fighting, all the visions and cosmic drama, his end is perfectly quiet and serene.
And his reward is immediate. The Archangel Michael shows up again, but this time he's the escort. Abraham's soul is wrapped in heavenly linen and carried by angels all the way up to paradise, to finally rest with the other saints. His long, defiant journey has ended in peace.
So we're left with this question, aren't we? This wild, imaginative story isn't just about a monster. It's this profound meditation on compassion, on the limits of defiance, and on the struggle for acceptance. It really forces us to ask, what does it mean to face the end, not with terror, but with understanding? And that's a question that's just as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago.